Alright, so y'all already know it's me. It's your girl Jamekia. Just coming to y'all like I just left work, and at work today with the kids, we were reading a excerpt from, I don't even want to call it that, but anyway, we were reading parts of Sojourner Truth, Ain't I a Woman? And while we were reading it, of course, you know, like we did it as a unit, as a class. It was a little bit of the I do, we do, you do situation going on. And I just gotta tell y'all, as I was reading these different pieces, because it was pretty much it came from two different things. One that was printed in like 1860 something, and one that was printed in 1850 something. It was two different articles, I guess, that were pulling pieces of her speech, and they posted it. They had it all written up. It was literally like 2 pages that we had to read, and I was reading it, and it really had me like in my head thinking about a couple things. And so I kind of want to have this like discussion with y'all, because not only did it have me thinking, and some of the other stuff that I've been reading had me thinking, but I already had this belief. So if y'all don't already know, I'm a firm believer in alignment. And when I say alignment, that means that the things that I am thinking about, or the things that I want to do, or whatever have you, I think that the universe is always working in my good and pulling those things towards me and making it very easy and simple for me to pick up and interpret and understand things. So when, as a language arts teacher, when I am teaching specific stuff to students, what I try to do is one, I bring real world examples into play, right? So I try to get our reading and stuff to connect with what they are already experiencing, or what they have had some type of experience in. I try to make it very simple for the students to understand it, if at all possible. And then what I also try to do is not only bring in their real world experiences, but then pull and allow the students to understand the time in which, the time frame and what was happening, what was transpiring around the time that a lot of these things were written, you know, different things like that, because it changes the perspective. And I feel this way about a lot of different subjects and whatnot, because what I find to be something that happens is that many people are always talking about, oh, well, if I was this person, I would not have, or if this is the case, and blah, 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 blah. And it's always all this talking, but they never look at it as, look at it in its own time, in its own timetable, when these things happen, and what was taking place, for them to get a full understanding of the situation that was transpiring. So, for example, we're talking about, I did an introduction about Sojourner Truth, and some of the kids, mostly nobody knew. Out of 100 and some students, nobody really knew who she was. They had heard the name, so a few had heard the name before. So that's cool. Then we kind of read some backstory about her. So saying that, you know, she was born into slavery. She escaped, so she wound up getting her freedom. And then, you know, she was an abolitionist. Then she wound up speaking about, I think like 22 years after her freedom, I think it said, or after her escape, she then started to speak on women's rights, and that was something that she was for. And so, you know, as we were reading some of the excerpts, and I wish I kind of had a copy here so I could go through it with y'all. So I might do another video and read some of it and break it down the way that I talked about it with the kids, and even go into it a little bit more in depth. But however, there was a piece that was in the article, and it was an argumentative essay, but there was a piece where I think at the very beginning of one, she started to talk about her her and how she deserved pretty much the whole thing, because I don't really know how to break it down, so I'm just gonna go off the cuff. What Sojourner Truth was talking about in her speech, Am I a Woman? It was pretty much saying, hey, men have their rights. And at this time, what a lot of people don't always talk about or don't bring up is the fact that white men along with black men had rights. They were able to vote, they were able to do things, and black men had rights, but way before white women. So with this idea that white men having rights, they also, they had these white men having rights, as always, black men having rights. These white women really was petitioning and working towards getting their rights because these men had rights. And so some of the men were coming back to the table and saying, hey, well, women, aren't like men. Women are dainty. Somebody has to help them onto the carriage. Somebody has to protect them from potholes. Somebody has to do all these things that we call chivalry, right? And so within that, as I was reading, I was like, okay, all these ideas, some of these ideas of what chivalry is displayed in this first paragraph. And yet, Sojourner Truth comes right behind and say, okay, you're saying all these things, but nobody's helping me into my carriage as a black woman. Nobody is taking care of me. No one is making sure that I don't step into the ditch or into dirt or whatever else. Nobody's doing these things that you say a woman deserves and should have happened for her. And then she was like, and then what you don't understand is that I'm out here, I till the ground, I pull up, I plant, it was like I till the ground, I plant, I pull up the fruit, the vegetables, whatever it is. It was other words, but in layman's terms, this is what she's doing. I process the field. I do the same thing that these men do, and not only do I do it, I'm no man out here currently can beat me at what I do. And she was like, so if men can have rights because they're doing all these things, then I should have rights as well because I'm doing all these things. I'm doing the same thing that a man does. So I don't understand why we can't be equal and have the same rights, because those things that you're saying that you're doing for these women, I don't get those things. So like when I was discussing this with the class, I was like, okay, what is happening in this paragraph? The first thing, she's comparing men to women. Secondly, she's comparing now that we have this men to women situation debacle down, she's also comparing, she's comparing women to women. The white woman to the black woman. It's not saying, it's not color, it's not colorism, just the idea of this is what it looks like to be taken care of, and this is not what I've been receiving. So she's comparing women to women, black women to white women. She's comparing men to women, and then she's saying, me as a black woman, I'm now in a whole different lane than any of these others, and so I should be able to do all these other things. If I can work like a man, I should be able to get paid and to be able to vote and do these things that men do. Since I'm not being cared for like these women over here, I need to be able to have the ability to take care of myself to this part. And I'm not saying that women shouldn't have their rights, because then in the second one she said explicitly, I believe that women should have rights. But she's saying all these things, and in that first paragraph too, or second paragraph, whatever else, it was like 7, I think. So the first 6 was the first excerpt, and then 7 through whatever was the second. So then she also says, not only are these things happening, she was like, I've birthed 13 children into this world, and I've seen all of my children be taken from me and put into slavery and been sold. And so not only do I see my children being sold, I've cried for them, and nobody's listening to me crying except for Jesus. So it's saying, me as this black woman, I've been hurt, I have been given less, and things have been taken from me, and still nobody's here to check for me, look for me, to do for me. So now what? And y'all, I don't know, I was reading that bad boy and I was feeling some kind of way, because I was all up in my feelings. I just gotta be honest, I was in my feelings. By the end of the day, I was about to start preaching that thing, but I didn't. I didn't. I calmed down. But I did pose a lot of questions to the students so that they could kind of discover these things on their own. And then, of course, we kept reading, and so she was like, that man that's back in the back, because this is her, giving her speech out. She's like, that man back there in the back in the black, he asked me, why should women have rights? Because Jesus was a man. Baby, her response, her response was on point. I was about to get out of character. I mean, y'all don't understand. I felt all of that. So she brought it up. She was like, this man in the back, who's wearing black, who comes in and he's like, women should have rights because Jesus wasn't a woman. And she quickly told him, she was like, hold up, who Jesus? What they got to do? Look, who Jesus? How did Jesus come to be? And so, she pulling in, this is when we were talking about rhetorical devices and different things like that. So she asked her rhetorical question. Rhetoric devices. And so she asked a rhetorical question, which is one of the rhetoric devices. So she's like, how was Jesus born? Like, how did he get here? How did he get here? Like, she asked it twice. And so I tell my students, when you start to see things repeat in a text or in a poem or whatever else, it's showing that it's important. It's the importance of something. So she's asking, so how did he get here? And so then she answers it too. She said, Jesus was born of God and a woman. There was no man into that. Baby, let's sit on that one. Jesus was born of God and a woman. There was no man in the midst of that. That was how man was created. From God and a woman, man was created. That man, Jesus, the one who everybody want to say that's God's son, that's his specialty, that's da-da-da. Sleep, baby. That was the best response there. She could have stopped there for me. But I know some of y'all like, oh, well, da-da-da, because, people be in their feelings. And then, of course, with that being said, she's like the man that's in the back, in the black. And I told the kids, because when the introduction, it said that a lot of the people who were there, of course, were lawmakers, that's your politicians, the clergy, which that's your religion, that's your church people. And then I think the third group was journalists. So that's your newspaper, your news reporters. These are things I have to break down for my students, because my students see these words, they don't know what none of that mean. And they in 8th grade and don't know what none of that mean. So I have to take my time when I'm breaking some of this stuff down. And so we're going through it step by step. And then she continues on and pretty much it's another piece in there where she was like, the first woman was pretty much who the first woman was one of the people who flipped the world upside down. And so men need to allow the women who are trying to turn it back upside right, they need to give them the opportunity and the space to do so that they can fix what has already been broken. I was like, sis is preaching. Sis was preaching in the 1800s, getting them together, coming from the simple fact of being a slave, no education, coming up and getting it together, because they even had a piece about intelligence. She was like, and that thing that they be asking about, what they be talking about in the mind or whatever, and somebody in the audience say intelligence, and she was like, yes, what does intelligence have anything to do with the Negro and the women getting their rights? My God-given rights, my natural rights. What is my intelligence? What is my intellect? What is my knowledge? What is my book work? What does my education have to do with me having rights? When I tell y'all, sis was preaching, sis was giving life. She was giving me all the teas. Like, I had such a good day today. Like, y'all just don't understand. She was giving all the teas. And it's in the book. So those of y'all who be in Florida and talking about, oh, well, you finna da-da-da-da-da. No, we not. It's in the book. I ain't read nothing that one already given to us by the state of Florida, through our county. I just took the book that they gave us and I read out the book that they gave us. I don't add no other books. I don't do no what it's called. I can't even think about what it's called, but novel reading. I don't do no novel reading because my kids ain't even ready for that. Ain't prepared for none of that. We are not. I'm not going to create nothing new. I'm using the text and stuff that they give us, but what I do is I'm very clear in mind and clear in thought when I'm able to go through and work with my students and get them to see what's there explicitly and implicitly stated in the text. So if for any teachers that are out there, you can do what you want. Look, you can do what you do. Your job is to teach what's there. That's a part of the standard. Okay? All right, so then going back into it, side note, never mind, y'all. I'm gonna have to, I gotta look that up and I'm gonna come back to y'all. I got some stuff to look up and come back to y'all about education. But then we went into the second piece. And so the second piece, from the first one, it was like, ain't I a woman, asking all these questions and saying all these things that, you know, was questioning these people who were in the room. The second piece, it was like, boom, I am for women's rights. And I hear all these people talking about, you know, equality of the sexes. And so if the sexes are equal and I'm here for women's rights and I'm a person who can handle myself better than any man can handle myself, then why am I not allowed to have those same rights? And that's where you're able to see in the text that these women were fighting for women's rights. And if you know, historically, a lot of the women were pulling black women in and talking about this being more independent and whatever else. But they needed those numbers, those black women, in order to support this idea of women's rights. But even within this confine of women's rights, black women were still on the bottom of the totem pole. So you had white men who had rights and privileges and was able to vote. You had black men who had rights and privileges and was able to vote because the male is trying to be the dominant of the two. Then you had the white women who were, yes, I'm taken care of and people are doing for me, but I want more. And so these white women who weren't doing a whole lot, I'm not gonna say they weren't doing anything, but who were more so rooted and taken care of, they still wanted the same thing. They wanted to be equals with men. And at this point, I would say with black men, because the idea is that there's a hierarchy with white men. So they wanted to say, hey, well, these black men are receiving these things and I should be held higher than the blacks. And y'all can take it, leave it, however you see it. Don't come around here. I don't need no comments down below about your perspective on nothing on this here. For real, unless you add into the proof. But that was a part of it. And so if you guys look at women's rights and how things were developed and all that stuff, you had the women's rights, you had these black women who were coming in and who were playing a major role in pushing women's rights and then still being at the bottom of the totem pole within that constraint and in that confine. And so you had this woman who in the late 1800s was still talking about these things and addressing it. And then of course, she went from the emotional aspect, because of course, like going back to that rhetoric of ethos, logos, pathos, and there's more out there, but those are the three that we primarily deal with in the class. Is it dealing with emotions? Is it dealing with logic? Or is it dealing with a credible source, right? So we went from pathos, which is your emotional values, to then the conversation in the next couple of paragraphs started to get into logic, so logos. And so we went through and we started talking about that. And so I was informing the kids. I was like, where's the logic in it? How is she bringing it in? And so she used figurative language and she used metaphors in order to get that across. And so she was comparing the mind, the intelligence, to cups. And she was like, if I'm a pint, why won't you allow my pint to be full if you're getting your quart full still? So if a woman is only a pint, if she's only so small, if she's only going to take up this little bit amount of space, and she's only good for this little bit, then why won't you give her her rights and allow her to do what she can do within her own scope? And you still have all these other things that are around you. You still have the court, right, which is bigger than a pint. You still have the court that is full. And so, of course, that's logical. That's going to have you thinking, okay, if we're saying that a woman can only do, X, Y, and Z, then if we have A to X, why would we worry so much about X, Y, and Z? Excuse me. I was like, oh, she a good one. But this was when colored people had common sense and was working towards something. We just need to get back to it. Just a little bit. Just a little bit, y'all. But I'm looking at it and I'm just so in awe. And I can see how these people were in awe because, y'all, I don't know, taking a minute to pause from there, but to go into it, if you guys have ever have the opportunity, I would suggest you read the bibliography of Frederick Douglass. Also go in and do Madam C.J. Walker. Also go in and look at Mary Cloud Bethune. Also go in and look at who formulated the Tuskegee. I can't remember his name at the moment, but the one who the Tuskegee school is based off of. Go look at these people, because you had him, that particular person, because I can't think of it right now. Dang, in my mind, y'all, I can see these some birds over here in my yard. But it's making me think about like other people, but I don't want to list all the W.E.D. Du Bois. I see his name, I see his face, I can't think of his name. The guy who was all about Pan-Africa and all that stuff. Go and check out some of these individuals just to research Pan-Africa, who sponsored Pan-Africa or whatever. He had a whole to do about it. I can't even think his name right now. But these are some amazing individuals who are coming up from slavery, who were pushing education, who were going across the one who did the Tuskegee and Mary Cloud Bethune. They were two individuals who sailed together and went over to Europe and asked some of the wealthier white people for money to formulate schools and things of that nature. And when they were able to get those funds, the caveat to it was they were told, we'll give you the funds because you are some intelligent black people, and we are in awe of the way you articulate yourself, the way you're arguing your case, X, Y, and Z. So we're going to give you the funding, but we also are challenging you or putting to you that you take care of the lower class whites. And so if you take that on as a part of your plight of educating the blacks and the lower class whites, then of course we will give you the funding that you need in order to start your schools and different things like that. So if you don't know, go get your book, go read, because sis know what she talking about. Look, sis did the research, and I think those who go through an awakening journey, I think one of the first stops in becoming quote unquote woke, I don't really like that term, but becoming more aware of self, is to understand your history and to get more in-depth information of what took place and how valuable you are as a person, and your community and your people are to the whole of society. And I may have a couple more rants that I go on and drop a couple little more knowledge and nuggets and stuff out there. But getting back to hopefully I covered it all, but getting back to the story, Sojourner Truth, pretty much, what I was saying was, you had a lot of these people coming up from slavery, who were just highly intelligent individuals who were within their own scope. And I have a lot of controversial comments that I'm probably gonna drop in another video. I'm gonna save it because I want this one to be just what it is. But you had a lot of individuals who show Black excellence at its best. And I think that it's very important that we understand the background and understand the people and the time period and in all of these different concepts as we start to, for me, I'll say, as we start to try to understand. The goal is to understand what was taking place then, so you can truly understand how important these roles are and were at the time in order to get things started and shifting and moving, are for now, in order to understand that when we talk, when young people talk about stuff, when you're taught, especially in the school system, when you're taught certain aspects of race and race relations and religion and all these things, a lot of stuff gets very convoluted because of people's ideas and their perspective on certain things, when in all reality, their perspective, sometimes it just don't matter. If you just give people the information and you show it to them correctly, you allow them to see, you'll realize that you come from your ancestry, right? You come from some people, some very prominent, important, magical individuals. And I'm gonna have a video where I just let loose soon, because the way that I see things is sometimes very different from other individuals, and I love it. But y'all, if y'all haven't read Ain't I a Woman, I would highly recommend it. If you are Black and brown, a person of color, I highly recommend you researching a few of those individuals that I have listed out. There are a lot of other poems and short stories and things that I would recommend as well as I go along. In the upcoming weeks, we're going to be reading more about different things that started in the early 1900s and coming on through. It may be out of order. A lot of stuff may be out of order. But as I teach it and I go over it, I think I'm going to come on to this platform and definitely push those things out as well, because I think it's just a lot of value that is there. And I think people aren't taught holistically so that you can really understand what was before you and how great these people were and how these movements came about. Because when I hear people, sometimes I hear people say, and I know I'm on a whole nother tangent, but I hear people say, oh, I'm not my ancestor, I'm not da 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 da, and I want to slap the taste out of them. Like, I real deal just want to be like, are you stupid? How disrespectful are you? Because I'm just like my ancestors. It ain't no different. That the blood, the water, and everything else. Like, when I tell y'all, baby, they spit me out, that's exactly what they did. They spit me out, and I fully understand, and I fully want to get to a point where I am, and I am actually, I'm at a point where I'm going to uncover a lot of things and explore a lot of thoughts and processes and make sure that I share these things with people, because you have to understand that people are making you think that for people of color, that Black people or Black people in America, that is just about Martin Luther King and he got us to end segregation and whatever else, but they don't tell you how spectacular Black people were when we were segregated, and how a lot of people weren't for Martin Luther King. And I'm not saying that I'm against the man. He did a lot of wonderful things. Don't get it twisted. I just want you to understand that if you really look back at most of those photos and pictures of the people getting eaten by dogs and chased and beat by police officers and going through the civil rights movement, that process, what people don't show us and don't tell us is that most of those individuals were college students. they were children themselves. Like, I want y'all, those of you who are 30 plus, I want you to think about when you were 20 and what was going on in your mind. Some of y'all still act like that, so it's okay. And the same thing for people who are 20 or whatever else. I want you to think back when you was 10 or younger. Would you still think that what you knew then, because you thought you was smart, you thought you had it all together, don't get it twisted, but can all those things still work for you how you are now? More than likely, not really. And I want us to keep things in perspective. That's the thing, is to build perspective and understanding, because people are very dismissive about when we hear and people talk about slavery, and they talk about coming up from slavery, but they really don't show you how great Black people were, and talk about the Renaissance, and talk about all the great things, because all the great things that Black people contributed to. And if it wasn't for Black people, America would not be great, period. And I said it. Okay, so we don't talk about this stuff, and although we hear the hints, and we hear people, oh well, people always stole our stuff and always did X, Y, and Z. It always happened and still happening. And always trying to force us into, because I did a talk earlier about control. People always trying to control the minds of the Black person and telling them how to exist in this society. And then you have these others who are, and when I say others, it's still Black people. I'm still talking about Black people. But you have these others who don't subscribe to the societal norms. And these people are still doing everything that they need to do. They're still amazing. They still do great work. All of these other things. And I'm going to come through. I'm going to be more specific in the next video. But yeah, I just had to talk about Sojourner Truth, because she hit home today. She was about that life. She really was. And I got the full read and all the teas, and I needed it. And when I talk about Black people, another story, another book, or whatever, I want y'all to look up, what's the book? I just got a new book. Well, you could do Langston Hughes, Zora Hurston. I don't feel like it was Zora though. I feel like, but Zora Hurston's amazing, so get her stuff too. Don't trip on that. No, it was Zora Hurston, because Alice Walker was referring to Zora Hurston in some of her books. So get Alice Walker too. Don't sleep on her either. But yeah, y'all. Just throwing some stuff out there. I'm about to go in my house. About to get my life together. Maybe get me a little snacky snack. I ain't even really hungry for real, but since I gotta stop eating at 6 and it's 5, I feel like I should put some in there just in case. All right, y'all. I love y'all. Again, subscribe to the channel down below. Like, comment, share. Please share it out. Please get your friends. Tell them to subscribe to the channel as well. Y'all, we about to be in there. Y'all want to be some of the first people to say, I was in there when she only had like 100 people. Be that person, because when I get up to the thousands and stuff like that, because it's happening very soon, very quickly, I want y'all to be able to say that. Like, I've been knew her. Because I sure said, I've been reading her. I've been looking at her stuff since she was on YouTube, and now she on HBO. Get into it. All right, y'all. I love y'all. Bye.